On your model railway layout, do all your wagons run around empty, like this one here? Well, I suppose that's how they generally come from the manufacturers, but in real life, an empty wagon was a wagon that wasn't earning any money, and the railway companies really didn't like that. These things are not ornaments, they're there to do a job. Now, wagon loads are available from the trade, and you can get plastic ones that will fit straight in there, or you can scratch build your own. But I've got access to a little halfway house that does some of the work for you, but is very, very adaptable. This kit from Geoscenix is really, really nice, sort of get you started, do a load of your wagons for you thing. Here we go. Inside we have some iron ore, some limestone, some coal, a couple of little syringes, and the important bits, which are some high quality cardboard that we'll use to make the supports for the wagon load. Now, you could take your bag of coal and fill the entire wagon up with it, which would work. I mean, it would look like a wagon full of coal. The trouble is, as soon as the wagon tipped over, you had a derailment, or you dropped it when you were moving it around, then you've got coal everywhere, and the whole layout is a mess, and you're very, very grumpy about the whole thing. The other option is to pour the coal in and then pour some PVA on top of it, and you've then got a solid mass of coal in the wagon, which again will work. But what happens if you want to run some unloaded wagons? It's also quite expensive in coal. I mean, you know, if you look at this packet, you're going to get what, 3-4 wagons out of it? Well, there is a much better idea, and that is what this kit is designed for. You take the cardboard and you make a platform that sits within the wagon, and then we put a little bit of coal or whatever we're carrying in the wagon on top of that platform. The platform's not glued into the wagon, so we can take it out when we want to and run an unloaded wagon, or change the load, for example, from coal to limestone, and the whole thing works out nice and flexible. Now, this stuff is really, really quite nice, this cardboard, and it's quite a simple thing to use. What you've got effectively is a sort of halfway house between scratch building your wagon loads and buying them ready to run. The other advantage of this is that they're all going to look different. Plastic wagon loads, by their very nature, will all look exactly the same, which is great, except that on the real railways the wagon loads didn't all look the same. They were dropped in differently, and all sorts of things. So you end up with plastic wagon loads that can look a bit like plastic wagon loads. As you can see, what I've done is I've measured the wagon, and I'm cutting out a top for the that will fit in the wagon, hopefully, and I'll try this in a minute. There we go. It's nice cardboard, this. It's a sort of corrugated cardboard, but it cuts very, very cleanly, unusually for corrugated cardboard, which generally is quite cheap stuff. Pop that in. Right, I've made it a little bit wide. That's all right. If you were careful, you could probably measure these things exactly. And certainly, if I was doing a lot of wagons, what I'd do is I'd make sure I'd got all my measurements exactly spot on. But the beauty of this is, of course, that the system will fit any wagon in, to be honest, any scale. So it's nice and adaptable. Still a little bit tight. You could use a sanding stick to thin these down, but that's quite messy in the studio, and so I'm just going to trim them with a knife. Again, I think that shows how good the material is that's in here, because it cuts, and I can cut a real thin sliver off the side. Usual safety note, always keep your fingers away from the blade and use a steel rule to cut with. There we are. You can see that's fitting in there nicely. It's good and tight, so I just have to whip that out. Now, what I want to do is I want to fit this so that it sits, I don't know, about yay high in the wagon, and the wagon is 17 millimeters deep. I'd like the coal to sit, say, I don't know, 5 millimeters off the top, so that's 10, less the thickness of the cardboard, which is 2. So if I make some strips about 8mm deep, then they should be suitable to act as what the instructions call legs for the I should say you do get instructions with the kit, although I say it's a nice, essentially such a simple thing. Don't need a lot, as you can see, quite quick and easy to do. Cutting away there, and what I'm going to do, there's no really right or wrong way to do this. If it works, then it's right. Now that is going to fit the length of the wagon, but I don't want that. What I want is it to be about 2/3 the length of the wagon. As you can see, I'm doing this all carefully by eye, although I will use a square for this cut. The reason I want that is because I want it so that I can push the end of the wagon load, and once I push the end of it, I want the other end to hoik up so that I can then stick my finger under it and hopefully be able to pull the wagon load out that way to make it really easy to unload. This is, so if we mark the centre line of the wagon, again, you don't need to be great precision on this, which is quite good for me really. Don't need great precision. There we are, centre line marked, and actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some angles on the end of these. Again, as you can see, terrific precision here from Phil. And I'm now going to put some glue on there. I'm using rocket card adhesive for this because it sets really quickly, and while that's setting, I'm just going to cut the remains in half and then in half again. And what these will do is these will sit like that, and the other one will do the same, and basically they're just going to give this a little bit of support, and there we have it, legs attached, and that can sit in the wagon. And hopefully if I put that in there, there you go, one platform within the wagon, and if I poke the end of it, up comes the other end, and voila, I can get the load out again. Let's tidy up the table a little bit. Right, I'm going to let that dry. This stuff does go off really quickly, but I am going to let it dry for a few minutes, and here's one I made earlier, which should also fit in the wagon. Yep, and up it pops. That's all very good. Now what I need to do is I need to put some of the load on top of it, but if I just put that in there and pour stuff on and slosh the glue around, what's going to happen? It's going to stick to the inside of the wagon. This is a bad thing because you want to be able to get it out again. The secret is to use some perfectly normal kitchen cling film, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to line the inside of the wagon with cling film so that hopefully, God, this stuff's dreadful to use, but anyway, it does the job. Here we go, put that out of the way, line the inside of the wagon with cling film. You probably want to use less than this, because then you'll get into less trouble when you do it. Oh, before I do that, let's just colour the top of the shelf with a black pen. Again, you can use paint, but black pen works very quickly, and it'll certainly do the job. It'll certainly do the job rather nicely. Always handy things to have around, actually, black permanent pens, because there's always little bits of shiny stuff you want to clean up and cover up on a model railway, and that's just handy to have around. There we are. That's now back in there. Time now to take my bag of coal, carefully get the top of it, and I will pour it into the wagon. I'm trying to do this so I don't cover the studio in little bits of fake coal. What I love about the Geoscenix range is they're all natural materials as well, so this isn't a sort of plasticky coal. There we go. And this has been, let's assume this wagon has been fairly neatly stacked. Different wagons, different loading. If it's been loaded from a hopper, you'll get more of a pile in the centre, but that pile will gradually shake itself to something like level. The other thing is that coal comes in all sorts of shapes. You can have big fat coal, you can have very, very small lumps of coal, very often for power stations. And so again, look at the prototype, but you can see this isn't perfectly flat. So unlike a sort of plastic load, it's going to sit there and look hopefully reasonably realistic. Now, next job is to put some watered down PVA on this, but before I do that, I like to spritz it with a little bit of water that's got some washing up liquid in it. Not a huge amount, a couple of drops just to break the surface tension, and then I get my ramekin full of PVA glue, pick up a bit on the syringe, and just drip it fairly liberally. This is a mix of 50-50 ordinary white PVA wood glue and water. I've let it steep for a few days. Basically, I mix up a jar of it and keep it on the shelf for when I need it, and that just ensures that you get a nice mix. I'll get this stuff reasonably wet because obviously there we go. I want all the bits to stick together, and there we have it. That'll take a few hours to dry. Ideally, you leave it overnight, and once that's dry, you can lift the cling film out, and you will have a loaded wagon. Now, a few things to think about when you're loading wagons. First thing is, what am I loading them with? Coal usually goes to the top of the wagon, but if you're loading an iron ore wagon, for example, like this one, actually you want to load it about half the depth of the wagon, because iron ore is considerably heavier than coal, to the stage that BR, when they were running these things around with 16-ton minerals, they cut holes in the side so that they couldn't overload the wagon with iron ore. Let's take that off and just make a mess of the studio floor for a minute. And the other one I thought I'd show you, this is a 16mm wagon, and I've used exactly the same material, but with a slightly different load on top. There you are. You can see that this actually works in all scales. Now, I've quickly used a bit of old ballast I had kicking around. At some point, I will cover this properly with some decent limestone from the Geoscenix range, because they do some really, really nice limestones. But I've put this together in a hurry overnight, just so that I got something to show you. So there you have it. Quick and simple wagon loads, thanks to the guys at Geoscenix. Really innovative little system. I would have said you're going to get probably a dozen wagons out of a kit easily, depending on how much material you use. You get 3 sheets of board in there. I've used one already for my for testing, and two syringes, and lots of material. So I would have said easily a dozen wagons of all sorts in 4mm. So I like this, nice and simple, bit innovative, little bit of modelling, and very satisfying to do. And the sort of job you can easily do several wagons in an evening and feel you've really achieved something on your layout. And when you see them run, then you can look at that and go, I did that and it looks fantastic. Happy modelling.